Hello and welcome back to ID24. ID24 is brought to you by the Paciello Group with kind support from Barclays and the Centre for Inclusive Design, and you can find more about both of those organisations on our website. If you like this session, please hit the like button and subscribe to the ID24 channel for future event streams and videos. We've got more plans for this channel, and subscribing is the best way to find out about them. Don't forget to send us questions for presenters by tweeting with the hashtag ID24, and we'll pass these questions on to our presenters at the end of each session. And for each session, the best question or comment will receive a free 90-day JAWS license. Just to note that the YouTube chat is open, but we are not monitoring it for questions. So it's just there so you can chat with your fellow participants and share information. And with that said, I have Neil Milliken here, who's going to talk about connecting communities for inclusion. Over to you, Neil.
Thank you very much, Ian. We're hoping that Deborah will join us shortly. The impossible has happened and her Mac has totally frozen, so I'm going to just plow on regardless. So who am I and what do I do? Well, I wear a lot of hats, and in fact, here is a picture of me with a lot of hats. I'm head of accessibility and digital inclusion for Atos. I'm our diversity lead for the UK. I do work for the W3C. I spend a lot of time in the social media space. I am a member of the Atos scientific community, which is our company think tank. Personally, I'm dyslexic, so I use assistive technology. I am digitally naturalized, so according to Pew Research, I'm 88% millennial, even though I'm much older than that, and I'm predisposed to being social. So if you know about Myers-Briggs personality type profiling, I'm ENFP. I'm quite impatient. I like stuff to happen. I'm evangelistic, so another personality type profiling thing has me down as an advocate. And outside of work, I'm co-founder of the largest Twitter chat in Europe on any topic. Now, I'm going to speak for Deborah, who is my co-founder of Access Chat, and she's CEO of Ruh Global and owner of a non-responsive Mac. She's a podcaster, consultant, media marketer focused on people with disabilities, certainly a social media influencer with several 100,000 followers on various channels, a published author multiple times, international public speaker, and she's ADHD and probably should be using assistive technology more than she does. She's allowed me to say that. So she's also mum to Sarah Ruh, who is an adult with trisomy 21, which is more commonly known as Down syndrome. And Sarah is the reason that Deborah got started in this business. And of course, outside of work, she's co-founder of Access Chat. And it is one of the largest Twitter chats in the world. So I'm hoping that my animated GIF works well. So many of you working in accessibility might think that this is somewhat familiar. It's a bit lonely working in a large organization. I work in one that's 100,000 people. And that really is quite a lonely place when you start off. In fact, when I started, I was the only person in our organization working on accessibility. So it wasn't a particularly well-known topic. And given some of the work that my organization did, disability was sometimes seen as tricky, scary, taboo, etc. And so it was really quite a difficult thing to do, to try and find things and ways of learning, connecting to people. But I had a need to do this. I wanted to understand and share best practices. So I turned to social media for the following reasons. Really personal learning, because there was nothing really relevant in our learning management system, which is Natalie called Atos University, apart from the stuff which I'd actually created. So I wasn't going to learn anything that much from myself. I wanted to find and create like-minded communities of people that were interested in inclusion in general, accessibility in particular. And I wanted to look outside of my organization and find ways of collaborating, because I strongly believe that it's only through collaboration that we can really move things along. Because as individuals, we have some power, but collectively we have much more. And most of the important people in the industry were active and engaged on social media. It's how I came to meet many of the people that are taking part in the talks today, and many others as well. So social media is pretty important as far as empowering people with disabilities is concerned. You know, there's no need for physical access in order to socialize. People see ideas before the disability, and this is particularly important where people like my friend Rosemary are concerned. She's very erudite, but she uses a head pointer. So social media is a great medium for her. And she works for Debra as the Chief Accessibility Officer for Ruh Global. Services like Twitter started off as text only, so they were very VI screen reader friendly. Sometimes less so as they've grown and become richer media, but there is work ongoing, as we know. And of course, communities can form around ideas and causes rather than being geographical. And this is really important. Ordinary people can become influential. So it's not who you work for, it's not where you were born, what school you went to, or anything like that, that really is a measure of your influence online. It's how you interact and what is the quality of the stuff that you are sharing. It's a fantastic way to share knowledge and information. I've learned so much from being on Twitter and LinkedIn and occasionally Facebook. I have to say it's not my favorite, but everybody has their own personal favorites. For me, Twitter has been brilliant because as someone with dyslexia and the memory of a gnat, the short and concise tweets were really nice for me to be able to actually understand and digest the content and then see what was really something that I wanted to understand and what to see, and could explore from there. And of course, like anything online, it's not perfect. Nothing is perfectly accessible, but you know, we'll have heard about enough of that already. So yes, we know there are issues. We know people are working on them, but it's still a valuable medium. So I'd like to introduce the catalyst because he's the person that's also not on this call, and that's Antonio Santos. Antonio and I worked together, and we were working on producing some training materials for our organization. He had been working on building communities around employee engagement and talent, and had come from a training background. And he'd witnessed the engagement and impact of something that was called T-Chat, which is focused around HR practices and as I said, employee engagement. And he'd been part of that community for a while, and wanted to do something similar as a test bed to prove our own theories about social media. So we looked at who are active in the space, and particularly around accessibility. And one of the most obvious people to see was Debra, because Debra was super active, big following, and was trying to do some stuff around, you know, discussions online using social media, had written a book about social media for older people and people with disabilities. So as a result of that, I approached Debra and we started Access Chat 3 years ago, pretty much to the day, as a side project, not knowing how long it would last or really anything about how it would snowball. So what is Access Chat? Well, it's really a very, very simple concept. It's a 30-minute video interview on a topic related to innovation and inclusion and accessibility. And yes, we caption it. Woe betide us if we didn't. It's followed by a 60-minute question and answer session on Twitter using the Access Chat hashtag. It's open to everyone. Everybody is welcome. There's really only one ground rule, and that is be nice. We have a website which we use as a central hub for our info and content. We post up the questions in advance to give people like Rosemary and others chance to compose their answers in advance. And it's the busiest Twitter chat in Europe and top 3 globally. And that's on any topic. So it's not the biggest accessibility chat. It's bar none on any topic. So really surprised us. And we've just been very lucky. We've had some amazing guests. So we have a mission behind it, and that is to break down barriers to inclusion. We're pan-disability. Doesn't really matter which disability group you affiliate with. Everyone is welcome. And in fact, the more the merrier, because we wish to bring people together. There's too much fragmentation across various different groups, and we want to have a open approach so that everyone can take part. We want to increase knowledge about accessibility around the world, connect people, and inspire them to action through collaboration. And of course, as I mentioned, be a safe and welcoming place to discuss issues that affect 1 billion people worldwide. And here you've got a picture of our homepage with a lovely shot of Jenny Lay-Flurry on it for the Chief Accessibility Officer from Microsoft, who we interviewed about a year ago now, I think. It's also a great forum for big employers to talk about accessibility and inclusion in the workplace. And this is really important. Not only do I work for a large company, I also provide stuff for other large companies. And quite often, they're quite reticent about the good work that they are doing. Because they've found that sometimes the response they can get is pretty spiky. And we wanted to, again, make the space available to everyone to be able to come on and share what they're doing. Because there are large companies doing great things, Barclays being an example. They're supporting this, they support Access Chat. Enterprise, you may know them as a car rental company, but they also are committed to the Business Disability Forum. Their European CIO is actually chair of that, and they're doing good stuff. They really want to do more. So we want to encourage people. So we also believe that things like the Paralympics, they showcase the art of the possible in a sporting context, but we want to extend that to other areas and day-to-day life, and particularly work, because work plays such a large part in everybody's lives. We have a massively wide range of topics as well, because we're probably the least technical talk of the day, which is probably a good thing, because I'm probably the worst accessibility specialist in the world. Or maybe not quite, but know your own weaknesses. So my strengths are connecting people, doing the political stuff, making sure that we can do all of the business processes around it to make sure that we make stuff accessible, and then building teams of people that are technically excellent. So we've had some amazing guests. We've had Jim Fruchterman, who is the guy behind Benetech. What an amazing company they are. Doing all kinds of things, from scanning machines to 3D tactile books and tactile maths and so on and so forth. And we were very, very lucky a few months back to have Stephen Fry come on and talk about mental health. So, as I said, Access Chat is pretty large. We've actually had stuff from Access Chat hit people's feeds over 2 billion times since we started measuring in March 2015. So we've had well over 500,000 direct mentions from nearly 19,000 different authors, and they have been shared. And that means that that's reached 80 million feeds primarily, and then been reshared, and that's what the spread is. And that's, if you think in website terms, that's impressions. So it's an awful lot, especially when we compare it to what we know large organizations are getting in general. In fact, Access Chat took us to the Paralympics. Well, it took me. I was the lucky one that got to go, so I got to go to Rio, and we were the partner for their Inclusion Summit there last September, which was great fun. Got to meet some of the most amazing people, and got to go to the stadium, and we were actually won an award. We facilitated all of the social media for the conference, and as a result, my company did rather well out of it, because there was a study done by a marketing agency which showed that absolutely we trounced all of the major brands during the Paralympics in terms of engagement and everything else. So this really demonstrates the power of our community to be able to amplify messages. So my organization did really well on the back of the fact that we built this community who were sharing great content and really engaged around the stuff that was going on. So it's a virtual community, but it is still a community. And we are bringing people together and really honestly changing lives. And this is one of the most gratifying things for me about the whole experience, is that we know that we're having a positive impact on lives. So Debbie is a lady who works for Fujitsu, who joined in Access Chat and effectively found her voice, and hadn't really talked about disability in public before, loved it, and has gone from strength to strength as a result. And it's great feedback for us, of course. And so we've also watched there be lots of spin-out projects. People are coming together from different areas and different areas of expertise. And as a result, we've got people from the deaf community working with the people from the visual impairment community, people working with across groups on projects, and there are a number of spin-outs, which is brilliant. And we're doing stuff around co-working and lots more too. There's some more stuff to be announced shortly. Just last weekend, we were engaged as a partner for Hack Access Dublin, which is something that Antonio was actively engaged in. And they move offline, of course. So Hack Access Dublin is leveraging the power of startup energy, and this was in the Google HQ in Dublin, and there were 3 or 4 teams that went over the whole weekend trying to promote a more diverse and open city, and there were a bunch of people with a range of different disabilities and a number of different assistive technologies there helping with the teams and mentoring. And so this is an activity that has spun out of some of the stuff that we've been doing online and is moving offline. So obviously we've been doing all of this stuff, but hopefully you don't just do stuff without learning. And for us, it's taught us an awful lot. So really, collaboration is not just a buzzword. We've been doing this stuff remotely for 3 years. It was only in April this year that the 3 of us all got it together in one place at the Funka conference in Stockholm. That was the first time we'd all been together in person. The rest of the time we're working on Skype and Hangouts and through social media. So it's possible to have virtual teams. It's taught us how to build communities around particular topics, obviously accessibility and inclusion, but Antonio have also taken that and used it within our own organization to be able to look at this and use it for other topics as well, which are related to the stuff we do in IT services and digital transformation. We also learned to use lots of new tools and help develop some new tools to really understand the dynamics of online communities. And this is something that I'm going to get into shortly. So this is a study by Analytical. They are a social media monitoring and listening company. They will be selling people these tools, and there will be a number of the people that are part of this community, not just our community, but part of the accessibility community and part of the Paciello group. I see at least one person there, Steve Faulkner, who are listed in their top 100 on accessibility and digital inclusion. Now, obviously, that's slightly different to just looking at accessibility influencers. Pleased to say we were all in the top 20, and that is not just because of what we do, but because of our community and the dialogue and so on, going backwards and forwards. Okay, so on to the big data and sciencey stuff. I say sciencey stuff because I'm not really a scientist. I do like learning about stuff, and I am fascinated by how people interact and by how the communities cross, and I'm trying to understand all of that. So Antonio and I have spent a long time looking at tools and helping develop tools to understand networks. So often the people, if you really want to affect change, the people that you most want to engage with are the people that sit at the intersection of topic communities, because they can amplify the effect of what you're trying to do by bringing in an entirely new community. And of course, our aim is to significantly amplify the voice of people with disabilities and the voice of the accessibility and inclusion communities. So we are actively seeking out those people to try and connect with them. So it's part of our strategy. And Debra's here.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. This is the first time this has ever happened with my computer. So sorry about that. So you keep going, Neil.
Okay. Okay.
I'm not going to add any value right now.
Okay. Okay. So what we have here is a screenshot from a tool called Relevance. Particularly like Relevance because it allows you to rank people's influence based upon topic rather than just aggregate score. And it looks at a range of different things, and it uses unstructured text, network analysis, social signals, along with semantic data, markup language, and neuro-linguistic programming to produce a set of structured topics. I think they've got something like maybe over 50K now with semantic information and a connected graph, which was the thing that you saw before, to enable you to score influencers based upon each of these topics. And sometimes they refer to them as tribes. And I know we have an accessibility tribe. So one of the things that we did was, because we were very interested in this, we actually approached Relevance and decided to fund some research, co-fund some research. They contributed, we contributed into the accessibility community. And it's pretty deep research, because we actually took an entire 2 months worth of tweets from the Twitter fire hose. So that's billions of tweets between November 2016 and January 2017, and started going through that and making sure that we had a bunch of keywords and everything else. So so what we got were keywords like disability, digital inclusion, A11Y, digital divide, neurodiversity, dyslexia. A lot of the things that we see as common terms. Deborah, do you mind muting? And as a result of that, we produced a report. And you can go online and see the report, and you can see the dashboard and dive into the interactive visual graph, which I'm going to show you some outline of shortly. And of course, you can get the full report in the link as well. So this is the graph, or this is a screenshot of the graph, and it is very, very detailed. What you can't really appreciate here is all of the names. You can drill down and it zooms in and you can see more and more connections. But what you can see from this is various different colors with thick lines connecting various different people. And you can see that there are distinct communities or flocks in the report. And you can also see that Donald Trump is there. And that was because something went on during this period that that linked him and meant that he was tweeting on the topic of disability. In fact, two things happened. One was that a US comedian, Rosie O'Donnell, tweeted that she thought his son was autistic. And the second one was he mocked a reporter who had a physical disability. And so that's why he's appearing in this graph. So graph theory is really important in terms of understanding networks. And I'll try and make it as simple as possible. And I had to try and simplify it even for me to understand. So if ancient Rome was on a network graph, it would be at the center of it because all roads lead to it and through it. So in graph theory, betweenness centrality is a measure of how many paths are going through and the shortest vertices. And it's pretty complex, but the greater the betweenness centrality, the bigger the connections on the graph, and the more connected people are, and the more influential that node is. So we also analyzed the top themes during the couple of months, and really, autism was up there, ASD and Asperger's. Some of that was down to the Donald Trump effect, but a lot of it isn't, because there is a very vibrant community, very active, or several communities, as we can attest. Dyslexia, special needs education, again, closely related, but also with some separate stuff. A lot around chronic pain and Spoonie. Big stuff around mental health, disability rights, human rights, and of course, then there's all of the stuff around the technical side of things. So accessibility, inclusive design, technology, etc. These were some of the key themes that we saw coming up time and time again. They weren't necessarily a surprise, but it's good to see that validated. And what we can see is who are the people that are connecting these different communities. Where are the points on the graph that are essential to connect with if we want to draw everything together? So we have various different topics, so accessibility being a structured topic. We can relate those topics, and that is how we can see the intersection. So we have a search interface. You can go in, you can search for accessibility, then you can search for some of the related topics. It will bring you back to the bubble diagram that I showed at the beginning, where the people in the middle node are, and you can see where the intersections are. Of course, right, Relevance isn't the only tool that's out there. There is a very popular tool called Clout. Clout is very well known and is probably the most commonly used measure of influence. It has a different set of algorithms to write Relevance and to Analytical. In fact, pretty much every single social analytics tool has its own way of measuring influence and calculating this stuff. So there is no one right answer. But there is some consistency, because some of the same people are still appearing, and yes, we're still there, all three of us from the Access Chat team. But it's good to see that Leonie Watson, who is also one of the first accessibility people that I followed on Twitter, is still up there as a key influencer, as recognized by Clout. So this is where it gets pretty deep, because actually we wanted to really understand the difference between who was influential, truly influential, rather than who had a big Twitter following, and so we were trying to drill down to see who was truly leading the conversations on accessibility and the topics that we mentioned before. And of course, it's somewhat subjective. So how does Right Relevance do it? It's measuring users and accounts influence in two distinct ways, looking at topical influence by measuring the quality of the network connections within the context of the topic, and engagement influence, which is measuring quality and quantity of engagements. So in terms of that would be retweets, mentions, replies, and also the reach of the tweets. So again, depending on who's retweeting, are the people that are retweeting and replying also influential within the context of that event or trend? And then it mines the social data at a very large scale, using billions of tweets, as I said, to really measure that influence. So apologies for all of the tables, but essentially what you've got is different kinds of rankings. So you've got top overall ranking, obviously you've got big news channels, and then you've got Donald Trump, and then you see some of the accessibility people coming down, and obviously when it goes to things like PageRank, which is just really relating to the size of their accounts and the frequency of visitors and everything else, not surprisingly, you see all of the really big news channels and the celebrities, and there you can see Rosie O'Donnell at number 12 in PageRank. But in the top overall, what you're getting is a mixture of people from the accessibility community and others that had been tweeting on disability related topics. So we needed to then sift down further to really get a better understanding. So when you start applying between the centrality influence measures to find out who the connectors are, you get a very different list. So the connectors list is based on between the centrality, which is the measure at which the node forms a bridge or critical link between the other users, which is pretty much as I explained it before. These people are Rome. And the first thing to notice is it's a very different list from the other list. At the very top, you've got a chap called David Perry, who is a historian and disability rights activist, rather than the well-known high follow account unrelated accounts. So this is really starting to give us a good idea of who are truly influential within the communities and within the topics. Who are the people that are engaging other people within the communities? So obviously there's people like myself and Debra, but there are others that I recognize here as well. So you've got for example, G3ICT, which is the outreach arm of the United Nations. You've got Ian Hamilton, who is the guy behind the Game Accessibility Guidelines. You've got Steve Silberman, who is behind the sort of author about being actually autistic, and a bunch of others that are much more focused on the topics at hand. So the top 5 connectors are David, Nancy Gedge, myself, Alice Wong under her disvisibility handle, and Debra. And this is just during this period of time, because Nancy has actually dropped lower on the list since this point, because she was active during this period on a particular topic. Right, okay, reach versus rank. So again, what you can see here are a couple of interesting things. So you've got a graph going with the reach going across to the right, which is the number of followers and the size of their overall network, and then you've got rank going upwards, so which is the availability. And so what you're seeing is that the connectors are all when they're measured with betweenness centrality, gain a lot of traction with regards to their ranking, even though we've got much, much smaller reach than Donald Trump or CNN or Fox News or whatever. And this is really because we are on topic. What we've got here is a picture of what is my flock. This is because I'm pretty on topic. I don't really tweet, apart from pictures of my white fluffy dog who's downstairs asleep, so he didn't disturb our broadcast today. I don't really tweet much about stuff other than technology or disability inclusion matters. Some stuff on diversity, but I mean, that's inclusion related. So what you can see is that these are interactions that we have. You can see Antonio and Debra, who are obviously part of the network, and we're connecting because of Access Chat. And then obviously you've got links to Microsoft and G3 ICT, and of course, Barclays Access. Well, we couldn't do without them. They're helping us keep the lights on. So it's helped us, understand that all of this data has helped us understand the community that we've built. And what we can see is that it's being fairly effective because we've actually got proof of this. And certainly my parent organization, my employer Atos, has benefited as a result of this because we're generating good press for them. They're getting insights from us. We've developed methodologies and tools. Debra's not done badly out of it either. Debra, have you? You can,
unmute now.
Yes, no, you can.
Yeah, the community engagement has been powerful. Being able to reach out to all the different brands and stakeholders, and it's been very powerful. I think the algorithms and the numbers prove that, but also the people that are constantly coming up to us, thanking us for the work we're doing, also, provide that kind of backup data as well.
Yeah, and it's also driving people to you, right? Because you've got a podcast as well. Yeah,
absolutely. It's especially in the United States. I have a lot of brands that are working with us that ask to be on Access Chat because it's such an influential. So it's been very good for my business, for my influence. And just it feels like this is a game changer, which is very important to me, because sometimes I feel when we're having some of these in-person conferences, it's like we're always talking to each other. So the value of this is that we've connected out way beyond just maybe this more narrow groups that I typically was talking to. So I think there's been many, many benefits from being part of this, not to mention becoming really good friends with Neil and Antonio, which was a perk.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's the gift that keeps on giving. But obviously, I've prattled on a lot about all of these really quite complex things, and we've gone into a great deal of detail, yes, and we've pretty much geeked out over statistics and trying to understand what's going on. And you're probably sitting here listening, thinking, well, I'm busy. This is way too much. How am I going to manage all of this stuff on social media on top of my day job? Fixing terrible websites and broken user experiences, and making sure that we unpick the yogurt out of braille displays. Doesn't do the pins much good, by the way. Luckily, you don't actually need to spend anywhere near as much time as I spend doing this to be effective. You can engage in social media in short bursts, and you can use your dead time to engage. So a great opportunity to do this is actually if you're using public transport. Mobile phone is actually one of the best methods for using social media. Why not just do your social media on your commute? Put it away, be done with it. you can also use tools to make it easier and quicker. And really, we've learned a lot about how to broadcast. I mean, we've talked about connecting to people for the last hour, but also we are also trying to get a message out there. So Deborah, Antonio, and I also schedule tweets and schedule stuff to try and inspire people. And we use tools like TweetDeck and Tweet Jukebox and a bunch of other tools to try and make that easier, so you can automate. It's a double-edged sword. You can automate too much, and you don't want to really annoy your audience. So that's something that absolutely you need to be aware of. But automation does work. So really, can we sign you up? This is something we're very passionate about. Social media can really deliver great engagement for you. It can deliver regular engagement with other human beings, because we don't want to engage with bots the whole time. We're working on bots, but they're not quite up to the kind of social experience that interacting with real humans gives you. So social media does give you that opportunity, and you can go from online to offline and meet people in the flesh. So it was great to meet Billy Gregory at Funka in April. Great also to meet Deborah and Antonio, and meet other people at other conferences, and effectively it's a great icebreaker, because you already feel that you know these people. So when you see them, you can go, oh great, I know you, and it facilitates quick conversations. It also gives you recognition of your expertise. We're all in a world now where it's the gig economy. People are less likely to stay in long-term jobs. A lot of people in the accessibility industry are freelancing. A huge proportion of people with disabilities are not in full-time employment and tend to be doing freelancing, sometimes through choice, sometimes through necessity, because they can't get a full-time job. So using social media is a great way to go out and market yourself and get recognized as an expert, both inside and outside of work. And of course, most importantly and passionately, we want this to be a great way of amplifying the message that accessibility and inclusive design is just a wonderful thing to do. It's the right thing to do. It's a profitable thing to do. And more people need to understand that. So using social media is a great way of doing that. So I'll leave the last words to Deborah, because I think I've said more than enough.
Well, thank you for doing my slides for me, since I was having technical problems in the background. It's always fun when all of a sudden your laptop won't boot up. Surprise! So I really appreciate that you taking the heavy lift for us, Neil. But I agree with everything that you're saying. That what I talk about when I, talk to people all over the world is that we must engage on social media. We have to engage on social media. That's where the conversations, the good, the bad, the ugly conversations are being held. And I work a lot with corporate brands, and they're really very scared of social media, because sometimes people are out there just waiting for you to make a mistake so they can get you. And we've surprisingly not had a lot of that negative activity on Access Chat, but we've actually, since we've been doing it 3 years, we have had a couple of, one tweet chat comes to mind. I won't bring it up, and I know that Neil instantly knows what I'm talking about. But we had one tweet chat where some of the community didn't like the guests that we invited, and so there was a big row about that. And what we do not want to do as the host that really care about this topic is be blackmailed by by a couple of members of the community saying, well, you shouldn't have them, because we really want to have all the different stakeholders and be having a global conversation. But if we really want to continue to advance accessibility and inclusion and disability, and really change these conversations from just charity-based conversations to we add value. When you make things accessible, it makes it work for everybody. You know, uh, community like Access Chat can really turn up the volume of those conversations. We also, because we care about this community, we use our influence to support things like ID24, or to thank our sponsor, our supporter like Barclays. Or yesterday I was on a chat about college, funding college in the United States, and really making sure that everything that we're doing over here is accessible, but also that students with disabilities are being included. So I think, we are more than a tweet chat. We are certainly a community, but as you can see, and as Neil went into the efforts that they've really made for Atos, to really make sure we understand the analytics and the data, and why some of the data comes out the way it does, as he was explaining. It's very robust, and we want to encourage people to join Access Chat, create your own chats, create your own groups, and really get engaged in social media, because that's how we're going to continue to really change what we're trying to do to make sure that people with disabilities are fully included in society. So I apologize for my technology problems, but Neil's so brilliant. I'm sure he did a fabulous job of helping me anyway. So
Thank you, Deborah. So I think we're pretty much bang on time. So if there are some questions,
Yep, we do have a couple questions.
Sure.
Well, I have a question I'm going to ask first, and we have one in the hopper from Antonio, which I think you've heard of him.
No, I have no idea
maybe.
who he is.
So my question is, what's that?
A stalker. Just kidding.
No, hey, that's cool. If I can compete with that. So my question, you've talked a lot about leveraging the platforms and the engagement on that. And I'm curious, how do you find the accessibility of the platforms themselves impact participation?
Yeah, I think you find different people gravitate to different platforms. So I think that Twitter is the best one for real-time communication and discussion. You can have in-depth stuff happening on Facebook, but essentially the biggest problem you've got with Twitter is the people posting images of text and stuff like that. I post images of text, but I also post the descriptions. But depending on which tools you use, you may or may not have the ability to add an image description when you're posting stuff. Some of the scheduling tools don't allow this. Today, Buffer finally actually released the ability to add image description to their scheduled tweets, which is great, because we interviewed Emmy Plums, the developer for Buffer, a few months back, and it's great that it's finally made it out. I just really hope that Twitter do the same with TweetDeck. Because they own the platform and they still haven't done it, even though they've got the API. So it is patchy. We see more people engaging with the video on Facebook, and then there's a different crowd again, probably not so much disability related, but sort of professional related, on LinkedIn. Where we're seeing HR professionals and stuff like that. So yeah, there are constraints to using the platforms, but also one of the best things about Twitter is it's so simple, that even if you don't like one particular client, there's probably another one that does suit you.
Right. There are certainly more than a few options out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would also.
I'm going to. Sorry.
Yeah, I would just also add to that one thing that we've seen. I think that they're all working on accessibility.
Yeah.
You've got some really brilliant people at Twitter and Facebook, but one thing that we have seen is, for a while, LinkedIn was the most accessible, and then some of the others started being more accessible than them. So I think a lot of efforts are being made. There's work to do, but I think the efforts that like ID24 is doing, Access Chat, all the different things we're doing to raise the profile of accessibility is encouraging these social media platforms like Buffer and others to really up their game. As I like the word Neil used, it's still patchy, and sometimes it's discouraging to see a platform become less accessible, which we have seen. But they're all doing something. I interviewed the head developer of Pinterest, and he was formerly designed Xbox with Microsoft. Brilliant man, also an individual with a disability, and they're doing some real creative stuff. Instagram has done some stuff, so done, but there still is work that needs to be done. So thank you.
I also think that there's huge potential with AI, image recognition, all of this kind of stuff. When we know that Facebook and others are applying a lot of their efforts into this kind of stuff to make their overall platform accessible, because actually, the proliferation of inaccessible media far outweighs the stuff that we're manually making accessible. So therefore, really, artificial intelligence is really key to the future accessibility of these platforms.
Okay, well, thank you. We're short on time, so I'm going to suggest you find this Antonio guy, and you follow up with him about his question, because
yeah, will do.
we do have to wrap, so I'm sorry for that. Let me do a little bit of the housekeeping here. First of all, thank you both, Neil and Debra, especially Debra. I know you had to struggle with connectivity, and Neil, you did a good job of managing the speaker that we had there for you. We've done the questions. I'd like to note that for each of these sessions, we pick the best question or comment that somebody has tweeted on the ID24 hashtag. That winner receives a 90-day JAWS license. So for this session, I'd like to award it to Michael Fairchild, who pointed out that the University of Nebraska is watching. Probably not the entire university, but hopefully a large enough crowd there. So congratulations, and Michael, send us a DM, and we'll get you the information that you need for the license. And a reminder that ID24 is brought to you by the Paciello Group with kind support from Barclays and the Center for Inclusive Design. You can find out more about each of them on our website. And if you like this session, hit that like button, subscribe to the ID4 channel for any future events, streams, and videos. And again, thank you both for participating. And for everybody who's still listening, we'll see you in the next session in a few minutes.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.